Welcome back to another episode of Paint Society. My name is Brian, and in this video, we're going to talk about the use of primer. Can we paint over primer, or do we have to seal? Do we have to seal every time? What is the difference between primer and sealer? Are they the same? How do I make a sealer? We're going to cover all those topics today in this video. So what we have here is a beautiful Lexus NX. We can see there was damage here on the quarter panel, and we're going to be doing a blend into the door. We also had some damage on the tailgate, and luckily for this vehicle, this tailgate was removable, the top cover, and as well as the bumper. And as I read your comments, you're most concerned and confused about sealer. Do I have to use it? Is it going to make my job come out better? When do I use it? Well, sealer, back when I started painting, I was very scared of, because an extra step, it could add more dirt, it could add more complications to the paint job. I want nothing to do with it. But as you start to see the benefits of sealer, you start to use it even more. Let's check out the reason why we would use sealer on this particular job. Now, I did go back and forth whether or not I was going to use sealer or just paint over the primer. If you're not going to use a sealer, you must prepare your primer even finer. And here's why. Here's a fine metallic. Now, any fine metallic is going to have very small particles of, let's say, metal or fine metallic. And what those particles are going to do is they're going to highlight any sort of area within your prep that is a scratch. So let's say we have not prepared the surface perfectly, or we just missed one tiny scratch or a little cluster of scratches. What this is going to do is it's going to sink into the lowest part of the scratch, the metallic, and when the sun comes out, it's going to highlight it. Or even in the shade, you're going to see little marks of sand scratches. And we just don't want that. You could spend a lot of time sanding it smooth and double checking, but really sometimes you just miss it. So with this particular color, we're going to want to seal it. Now, this is borderline blend, and what I mean by that is taking it into the fenders. But I'm going to attempt something very difficult, sealing only into this area and taking the blend a little bit further. And we're going to show you how. Now, over on this side, I would definitely always use sealer, because anywhere where you have a blend and you have primer right up to the edge of the other adjacent panel, what you're going to want to do is put the same color on that panel as well, so that they both match. And surely, yes, you could put base on here and it might look fine, but again, the sand scratches, the fine metallic. If this was black or any solid color, it'd be much more forgiving. Now, we also have on this side our tailgate cover. We're going to be taking color all the way here, and it's going to meet up to our bumper. Let's chat about our bumper for a moment. On our bumper, we only have primer here and primer here, and theoretically, the rest of the paint is fine. But no painter is going to waste their time trying to prep this out perfectly so that you can put primer. I just like to rip through them with 400, seal the whole entire thing, since we already know we're putting color over here, and we have color over here next to our tailgate. We know that we're going to have a matching color. And this is the only part on the vehicle where we'll have to butt match. Luckily, I know I have a good color match. Which leads to my next point. If you're not sure about the color match, don't seal it. Really take time to prepare your color so that you don't lose real estate. You see, when you seal, remember that overspray is going to come over, and you're going to have to cover it, and you're going to keep on stepping it out to the point where, remember, you're going to have color. The good thing with this vehicle is the way that the hood is shaped. We have this area right here that's flat, and all the overspray for the most part is going to catch the top. We're going to show you some tips and tricks to kind of get away with it. So let's get started. So here we have it. We have our material mixed up. I used 3/4 white and then some black to equal up to my mixing ratio 3:1:1. Now we have 3 parts. We need to add the 1:1 or the 1:1. Now, not all systems are the same, but for this particular system, color build, you can make a primer out of it or a sealer. When you add these ingredients into the mix, it makes it thicker and it makes it sandable. When you add these ingredients to the mix, it thins it out and it's non-sandable, meaning you put paint on top of it. That doesn't mean you can't nib it out, but it doesn't really ever dry. It stays soft. So since we're going to be using sealer, we're going to put 1:1 in the mix from 3:1:1. Keep in mind, we already used this for the actual primer on the vehicle when we primed it after it got its bodywork. Now we're going to be using this DV1 Special Edition Galaxy, and I'm going to be using it because I want the low overspray. This gun works around 14 PSI, and I want overspray of sealer all over the place. Now, you never want to enter the booth without first having your blending additive, clear base, intercoat clear. This is all the same stuff. I'll put a link in the description. I know a couple other brands that make something similar. Keep in mind, you're not going to find this sealer or color build on Amazon, but if you go to your jobber or local paint store that sells this paint, you might find it. Now, another reason why I seal, and you might have experienced this, is sometimes if you're using extra slow reducer or slow reducer, it's going to start to leave some sort of different texture around your primer area, or your whole entire primer area might look flat compared to the rest of the actual panel itself. When you use extra slow, it has more time to dry, and it likes to attack the weakest point. What is the weakest point right now? The edge of the primer. Let's not make it weak. Let's put our sealer on, thinned out primer, and we're gonna stay away from this edge, but I got a trick for this area. So I got her at 14 PSI, and I'm not gonna pull the trigger all the way, just a little bit, just like that. See that? Watch. Barely pushing it. And I just wanna go about 4 to 5 inches past my primer, and this way I can seal up all of those edges and any stray sand scratches that I might have missed. Now over here, you can just take it all the way, pick it back up. Now the most important thing that you need to do is right away put that clear base on. That clear base is going to smooth out this edge. So it's been flashing for a good 15 minutes and it's smooth, but let's say it's not. Well, you could go ahead and lightly sand it, but not yet. I want you to put a coat of base on it and then sand the base. You don't want to start sanding the sealer. The base coat's going to sand a lot better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get coverage here on my sealer, and I don't have to worry about any stray sand scratch. But that's something that's going to take time for you guys to understand, that these chemicals need to dry before you even touch them if you need to. Once again, we're using our DV1. You can handle it between 14 and 16 PSI, and we're going to cover only our sealer. We will be going up a little bit further towards the edge of the hood, but we're not going to come into this area. We want basic coverage right now. We're going to be around 75% overlap. Since we're using extra slow reducer, the reducer will smooth out on its own. And basically what that means is when we put the paint on, the extra slow reducer will help it from drying right away and have a smoother finish when it comes to drying for base coat. And just like that, let's let it dry and head on over to our door. Now here's where our techniques needs to be better, because if we don't have a good technique, we're going to see the blend. On a hood, you're not going to see the blend too much on a flat panel, but when it comes to painting the side of the panel and looking at this vehicle in direct sunlight or even in the shade from a distance, you'll be able to catch a blend if the technique is not perfect. So once again, we'll start by just covering our sealer. So luckily for us, we have a good sealer coat. The color is similar to what's on the actual car, so that one coat right there really covers it, so we can start our blend in the second and then maybe put a drop coat for the third, and this one will be really good to go. My turn. Now, if it doesn't look good after the first coat, like I said, you can get a K800, lightly sanded. This is the hand pad by Eagle Abrasives. And then from there, you can clean it all off. I don't want you guys to think it's gonna be perfect the first time. It might not be if it's too hot. Sealer can go on dry. One thing I probably should have done, but I got away with, is taking the sealer all the way to the edge of the hood, so I didn't have that crusty edge here to have to blend in. So if you can next time, and that's something I just learned and reminded myself, take it all the way to the edge. That way you only have a couple areas on either side of the hood that you just need that to smooth out. It's no big deal, you can always sand it, but we want to try to not have as much contact with the panel like I said earlier. From this point, I already got good coverage because of the sealer. Sealer really helps with that. If it was primer, it would have been like a sponge. Primer would have soaked it in. Think about like the first time that you're going to seal a paver in your driveway and you put that first coat of sealer on, it's like you didn't even do it, right? Or let's talk about putting paint on drywall for the first time without a primer, right? The primer would have been the sealer in this case. It just soaks it right up like a sponge because it's so porous. And the reason why is because the primer's been sanded, so it's porous. The sealer is not, it's got a skin on it. So when we seal it, it's got that skin. That's why I tell you not to sand it, because the paint's sitting on top of it instead of going into it, all right? So that's why sealer is able to help you so much with your coverage. That's why I'm gonna put one coat on now, a wet coat, and then right away, I'm gonna just dial back a little bit, not gonna change much, just technique, dial back just a little bit, put a drop coat on it since it's silver metallic, and then we'll shoot it from there.
And it's so hot that this is drying so quick, and you don't want it to dry by the time it hits the panel. Think about the paint gun, it's breaking it up and it's drying the paint. That's why that extra slow helps. I got coverage, now I'm going right back over at a little bit of a distance. That way this thing will look streakless, nice and beautiful finish, just the way a Lexus should be. Try to stay away from that edge and use the body line for reference. There we go. Now let's go over to the quarter panel. Same thing here, coverage and then orientation. All right, a little bit more of a distance. Not changing the pressure. Extra slow, over reduced, and the paint gun. No problem. Blend it out. That's silky smooth. And of course, I'll just do the same thing to these two guys.
Well, it's ready for clear. You see this thing looks really, really good. Silky smooth. Over here looks pretty good as well, but we won't know until it's cleared. And this is not a clearing video, so let's clear it. Let's get it outside. Let's take a look.